Hello, I'm Eric Green, Program Director with SC Media, and sitting here with Bill Mann, who's the Senior Vice President of Products and Chief Product Officer for Centrify. So when we're talking about where we are today with enterprises, there's been this shift that we've been talking about, and you see how mobile and cloud are really affecting enterprises. Can you talk a little bit about that shift and what it means to today's organization?
It's a massive shift. Right? What's happening is, everybody's mindset is kind of changing. We used to have this kind of very nice environment where everything was protected by a digital firewall. Your users were inside the firewall, your applications were inside the firewall, all the access was inside the firewall with PCs. And now what have we got? We've got access from anywhere. We've got, applications in the cloud. We've got everybody with a mobile phone wanting immediate access to applications and services. Even outsourcing is very, very different. You've got folks working for, let's say, one of those consulting companies who are servicing your servers inside Amazon or on your on-premises. So the world is extremely different, and that difference means that the way you kind of think about security is profoundly different as well. But the problem is, we haven't really changed our thinking on security. We still have this kind of mindset of the old world, but we're living in this kind of age of access, and this age of access where, in reality, we're really living in this kind of hybrid environment of this interconnected kind of elements, right? But the mindset of everybody within the organization, anybody who's responsible for security, is still, yesterday's world. And I think that's the big shift that's happening at the moment.
Certainly for the smaller organizations, there's outside IT that are managing these things and the like. Do you see that one is accepting this more than another, like a mid-size or an SMB versus large organizations? Or is the acceptance level just sort of moving with the ship right now?
It's really moving with the ship. Everybody's going towards this direction at the moment. I think it's actually being accepted in smaller and mid-sized companies faster than the larger organizations, and because the larger organizations are the ones which have got more complexity, legacy systems and so forth. But the smaller organizations, they're shifting very fast to cloud, and they are witnessing these multiple applications. They witnessed that 4 or 5 years ago when they started moving to the cloud, and they wanted something easy. So it really started up with, hey, give us a portal where our users can, have a single way to have access to all apps. Then let's add multi-factor authentication to that. Let's add the ability to provision applications and deprovision applications. So when somebody joins an organization, the apps just turn up. When they leave the organization, apps disappear. There's a basic principle in security called least privilege. Give people the least amount of access. And that's something that is implemented in these kind of solutions for end users, where you do lifecycle management and so forth, right? So a person moves from one department to another, you assess which application they need to have, and if they don't need to have those applications, they disappear. But they don't just disappear from their PCs and their their desktops. They disappear from their mobile devices as well. And that's the other interesting part of all this integration, because you don't want it to now work in one environment, but not in every other one environment. Because I mean, just like everybody else, I switch between devices on a regular basis, and depending on where I am, I can now do most of my job on my phone. And that's a telling sign for the way things are shifting. And I know I'm not the recent generation either, and others are doing it in a faster way than I am. So I think that's a shift, and the same shift is happening on the data center side as well. Most of what we've talked about is end users having access to applications, but the other threat is the data center itself, where IT workers have got access to everything in that data center. The average IT worker goes into a data center, has access to the root password, and that gives them access to everything. But again, what we do there is the equivalent of single sign-on. So they log in with their one identity rather than multiple identities. We implement multi-factor authentication when they log on to a Unix machine or a Windows machine. When they want to run a particular command, let's say they're an Oracle DBA and they're going to restart the Oracle database. You might want to say, just before you restart that Oracle database, I want you to re-authenticate. And the same notification would come on the phone, exactly the same product, where you would have to say, yes, this is me again, and then you can restart the Oracle database. And just like we do in the use case I talked about, with lifecycle management for deprovisioning applications, we do least privilege on servers as well. So if your job is you're an Oracle DBA, you should only run commands which are related to your task of being a DBA. You shouldn't be doing other stuff. And you shouldn't be able to go into other directories and look at other files and so forth, which is exactly what hackers are trying to do. So that's all the capabilities we provide there.
It's been very interesting how we've sort of moved around where identity and access management are very important within the organization. And we were talking a little bit about communication between different parts of the organization, which always leads me to what I call the buying community, right? And so who is the buying community for this? Because on the one side, you've got IT infrastructure and that piece, and they're a very critical part here, but the breaches are very much a security problem. And so in your experience, as you're looking at this new perimeter and you're combining mobile and cloud with fixed infrastructure, who's the buying community that you guys talk to?
You know, that is that's an important point, because it is hard to answer that question. And you touched on it, because the issue with identity is it touches a lot of things. And because it touches a lot of things, then that means there's a lot of people who've got a voice in what you want to buy and so forth, right? But ultimately, it all goes up to the CIO, and hopefully the CEO, who has risk and the appetite for understanding what's really happening inside the organization. But if I go down another level, you're right. It touches IT, it touches network, it touches endpoint, or whatever we now call what is PC security and so forth, right? It touches HR. It touches so many departments, and usually what I see is successful IAM projects go from top down.
Yep. And so within that actually leads me back to what we were initially talking about, is that message, right? So you have these different pieces. You've got the fixed network piece, and you have that discussion part. We've talked earlier about the boundless enterprise and how the perimeter has sort of expanded, and that's a paradigm shift. And part of your goal, as I understand it, is to get people to really embrace and understand that paradigm shift. So how are you explaining that, right? And who are you explaining that to?
We're trying to explain to the enterprise that you need to now focus on a paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift has got to be around identity security. And focus on implementing identity security for your organization. And with data from the Forrester report as one data point, it's showing that companies that do follow that maturity model are going to be able to reduce risk. So, and that's the board level conversation really, which is reducing risk. And I think that's where this is going to hit, because a lot of companies have tried to explain this to board levels for a long period of time, but only now we're getting some really good data, which is hard to argue with. You've got the Verizon report, which is telling you 2/3 of breaches are to do with compromised credentials. And then you got a Forrester report telling you that if you do implement this, you're going to reduce your risk of breaches, and you're actually going to reduce IT spend as well. So it's kind of like a double whammy in terms of information that helps you convince an organization that they need to move down this path. So that's what we're really doing. I mean, yes, underneath this is all the technologies I mentioned, like MFA, single sign-on, privilege management, et cetera, but the headline is really the fact that unless you do something around this, every dollar you're spending in IT, which is not around this space called identity, is, I would argue, a dollar wasted.
So I wanted to end with something prescriptive, and that's just what you gave us. So thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for talking to us today.
I enjoyed this. Thank you.